with Sports Nightly. First, tonight's sports headlines.
Good evening, I'm Austin Norman. Time now for the Sports Ticker, brought to you by Cornerstone Bank. While times seem uncertain, Cornerstone Bank is here for you and your financial needs, just like they have been for the last 138 years. When times are difficult, there is no place like Nebraska. Bank on a solid foundation with Cornerstone Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. Just 6 days after announcing its 10-game conference-only schedule for football, the Big Ten Conference announced today that it plans to postpone all fall sports. The conference says it plans to play in the spring if the situation looks better. Nebraska officials released a statement today saying, quote, "We are very disappointed in the decision by the Big Ten Conference to postpone the fall football season, as we have been and continue to be ready to play. Safety comes first. Based on the conversations with our medical experts, we continue to strongly believe the absolute safest place for our student athletes is within the rigorous safety protocols, testing procedures, and the structure and support provided by Husker Athletics. We will continue to consult with medical experts and evaluate the situation as it emerges. We hope it may be possible for our student athletes to have the opportunity to compete," end quote. About an hour and a half after the Big Ten's announcement, the Pac-12 made the exact same move. On the other hand, the ACC and SEC released statements reaffirming their commitment to playing sports this fall. No day games in Major League Baseball, but a couple of games in progress right now. In the top of the second, the Marlins lead the Blue Jays 1-0 in Toronto's home opener being played in Buffalo. And in the top of the second as well, no score between the Royals and the Reds in Cincinnati. Coming up here in just a couple minutes, we'll have first pitch between the Braves and the Yankees, as well as between the Orioles and Phillies, Cubs, Indians, White Sox and Tigers, and Nationals and Mets. A few NBA final scores to give you. Game 1 of the day saw the Nets beat the Magic 108-96, and the Spurs beat the Rockets 123-105 behind 24 points and 11 rebounds from Keldon Johnson. Games in progress right now. The Celtics lead the Grizzlies 94-80 early fourth quarter, and early first quarter it's Mavericks 31, Trailblazers 26. Live inside the Husker Sports Network studios, I'm Austin Norman.
Your state, your team, your show. This is Sports Nightly.
Two wide outs to the left. Mills in the backfield with Martinez. Adrian gets the snap, gives it off to Mills. Mills spins away. He's to the 40, 45, 50, 45, 40, 35, 30. Tightrope to the sideline, steps out of bounds inside the 30-yard line. Dedrick Mills has been a man today here in Lincoln.
Now, let's check the pulse of Husker Nation with your hosts, Greg Sharp and Ben McLaughlin.
1 month ago, the Big Ten surprised the college football world by saying we're going conference games only. Surprising, shocking the other commissioners of the Power 5 Conference. Today, the Big Ten Conference became the first of the Power 5 conferences to say no football at all. Welcome to Sports Nightly on a glorious Tuesday night. After the euphoria, as Austin's mentioned in the ticker, of 6 days ago of announcing a schedule, the Big Ten Conference today pulls the plug on college football. What changed? When asked, Kevin Warren, the Big Ten commissioner, stumbled, fumbled, and bumbled his way to a non-answer. Unbelievable turn of events today after some passionate pleas by college football coaches in the Big Ten yesterday, Ben, to slow down, hold off, don't make any rash decisions. 24 hours later, the league says, we're done.
Yeah, not even sure really where to start. I think, first of all, just how I feel. I feel sad. I feel dejected, demoralized, frustrated, mad, angry, all of it. I mean, I think that for so many reasons. And, again, it's tough to point where to start because there are so many things to talk about when it comes to this particular issue. I guess we may as well start with, as you said, the Big Ten commissioner addressing or lack thereof of everybody, the media, the fans, coaches, players, presidents. That was an embarrassment of an interview, if you can even call it that. That's a man that obviously was instructed by lawyers to filibuster as best as you can and go on to Dave Rebzin's questions and give an answer without giving any answer at all. And he successfully did that to about every question that he was asked today. We were basically given zero information from the commissioner today behind his interview, which was frustrating. I give a lot of credit to Dave Revson for the way that he handled that interview. I wish I could give the reporter credit that put this tweet out, but he's absolutely right when he said, Dave Revson proved today that you could still be a member of a conference network and a journalist at the same time. I applaud his ability to poke and prod and not, let Kevin Warren filibuster for as much as he can without answering, but then, again, ask the pointed question right up in the follow-up and hoping to get an answer, and we just didn't. Nebraska, of course, puts out a statement to follow talking about their disappointment, and you knew that was going to come based on what happened yesterday and the stance that Nebraska took. It's a hard reality to grasp right now, Greg, the fact that we're not going to be watching Nebraska play football unless drastic measures are taken this season. So I feel for our players. I really hurt for those players. I hurt for our coaches. I hurt for the recruits. And more importantly, Greg, I hurt for all of our friends in the athletic department who now are going home to their families and wondering if they're going to have a job in a couple of weeks, in a couple of months, at the turn of the year. People that we work with on a daily basis and know to be very fine people that we're not quite sure what's going to happen in their future, or even our future for that matter. So
absolutely, yeah.
It's there are so many things to even think about and consider right now with the news today. I'm super bummed and disappointed that the Big Ten was the first conference to call it quits today. And we on this show a couple of Wednesdays ago said what we thought was going to happen based on what we were hearing. And it was very wishy-washy from what we were hearing. The reporting that was being done was very wishy-washy, but ultimately led to this decision today, which I think if you peel back the layer of the onion, you could have seen this coming a couple of weeks ago. And unfortunately, that day's finally come, and the Huskers won't be playing football this fall. And in turn, this community is going to suffer from this decision for years and years to come.
Yeah, it just the whole thing, the whole last 7 days has just been really mind-boggling to roll out a breakfast edition of your schedule and then pound your chest with how wonderful you've been in creating this flexible schedule with bye weeks and the ability to move things around and parade that out. And then a couple of days later saying, yeah, we're done. I mean, come on. It has been a stumbling experience. It's been just a black eye for the Big Ten, the way they have handled this over the last 7 days. And as Austin said, I mean, it was 6 days from the schedule to today, but Saturday morning, so 3 days after the schedule came out, there were a lot of reports that the Big Ten was done. So it wasn't even really 6, it was 3. Andy Greeter, who comes on our Big Ten Blitz all the time from the St. Paul Pioneer Press, had a tweet from the quote from the Minnesota president that said, well, we really didn't take a vote. It was just kind of the feeling in the room. What? So who made the call? I guess the commissioner made the call. He's just like, yeah, I'll do it. I'm going to pull this. And, hey, let me just say this, too. Ultimately, this might be the right call. This could be the right call. If the other conferences aren't able to pull this off and get it to work, this might be the right call. I'm not, but the way they've handled and mixed and matched and tugged and pulled at the emotions of so many people over the last 7 days is really hard to stomach as we make our way through this. And let's also just stop. Let's stop the thought of a spring football season. That is not going to happen. That is fallacy. That's completely giving people false hope. That shouldn't even really be being discussed right now.
Yeah, it's totally the conference trying to save face. But to me, what it does is it takes away all validity to the statement that they put out today that seemed to be drilling through our heads about the safety and well-being of players being the sole purpose of why the fall season was not going to happen. But we're going to make you feel a little better by not pulling off the table that a spring season is going to happen. Okay, well, let's think about that for a second. If you truly are looking out for the well-being of student-athletes, you would not make them play 20-plus football games in a span from March to November. There's no way, if you understand the physical toll that this sport takes on a body, you would not let these kids, you wouldn't entertain the idea to let these players play 20 games in an 8-month span, 7 to 8 month span. There's no way you could look yourself in the mirror and do that. So to me, it takes all the validity away of what you're saying about the safety being the priority of, of their decision making, the mental, physical, and emotional well-being of the players is what they keep saying, and I just don't see it. The fact that you're going to leave a spring season on the table when that's the exact opposite of looking out for the well-being of your players. You see the way that these guys come out of a locker room after the game with ice bags taped to their shoulders and, bandage wraps and turf marks on their elbows and the walking boots and the crutches. It's like these guys just go pound on each other, but we're going to ask them to do that same thing, maybe in a shortened season, in a one calendar year, is absolutely asinine to me. So if you're sitting there tonight wondering about a spring season, don't even give yourself that hope, that possibility, right, because it's absolutely not going to happen. I've even heard people say, well, how much time do they possibly need off? You're giving them 3 months off, and, you go through a spring season anyway, so there's really not that much time. You have all winter. The spring season is more for those younger guys to get reps anyway and to knock rust off. And then you go into those summer months where you go enter another form of conditioning and you get yourself ready for the long fall. So, yeah, it's basically 8 straight months off with a couple of weeks of practice here and there sprinkled in, mostly for the younger guys and the new players to get reps. It's just absolutely inconceivable to me that a spring season is going to happen, and, again, takes away even more of the transparency, of the validity of the conference commissioner today. For even leaving that on the table, to me, is wildly irresponsible.
Yeah, and even if you continue to watch the BTN special this afternoon, they had Urban Meyer, former Ohio State coach, who said that's silly. You can't. That shouldn't even be on the table. Barry Alvarez, Wisconsin AD, basically said the same thing. Yeah, and I don't think that's really realistic to do that. So we can just put that to bed that that's not going to happen today. I'm infuriated by the way they handled all this. They knew practice was starting on Friday. They gave the go-ahead for practice to start on Friday, to fire up the players on the football team, and then to be handed a note in the middle of practice, as Scott Frost was on Saturday, saying, this is all you can do. You can't put pads on. It's just been botched from the get-go. And I think Nebraska's leadership has known that for a while, and I think that's why they put out such a strong statement today. They have not liked the way this has been handled over the last month, and it's kind of cowardice for the rest of the people in the league to not kind of say the same thing. I mean, come on. This has just been handled so poorly by the commissioner and all the people in this league. To not come up and go, yeah, we botched this thing is a bad thing. Now, not everybody agrees with that. Don has sent us a text on our text line at 531-500-4686. I find it disappointing and embarrassing for NU to come out against the conference and suggest that you will go rogue this fall. You join a conference for the good and the bad. And then you said you were watching ESPN this afternoon, and some of their announcers were taking Nebraska to task for their attitude the last 24 hours.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody can sit there and say to just follow blindly what your conference believes and feels. Nebraska has not done that in any sport, Greg. The first example that comes to mind is Nebraska baseball. They completely shifted the idea of an entire conference when it came to scheduling, when it came to facilities. Nebraska single-handedly changed the mindset of the entire conference with one sport. And if your conference is going to come out there and start supporting things and changing the way of doing things, you're allowed to have your own opinion as a university about it. You don't have to just shut up and say, well, I'm just glad to be a part of this, and we're gonna be on board with whatever the Big Ten wants us to do. What if the Big Ten comes out and says, we're only going to play 2 conference games, and we want to make it a conference-wide mandate that you play 5 FCS schools? It would never happen, but what if it did? Are you supposed to just say, okay, we're in the Big Ten, we'll do whatever you say? I don't agree with that at all. A school is allowed to have their own voice, their own thought process, and their own belief system, and they're allowed to voice that. If they're upset about something, Nebraska was the same way in the Big 12. They were unhappy. Nebraska wasn't the only school that was unhappy. Colorado was unhappy. Oklahoma State, Kansas State, everybody was unhappy with Texas. Texas A&M, obviously unhappy. You don't just follow blindly what your commissioners in the league office says, no matter what they do. That's not right either.
They have in the Big Ten for decades with Jim Delaney at the helm. Let's plug in a couple calls before we go to a break. John in Lincoln joins us first tonight. Good evening, John.
Hi, how are you doing? I just feel sort of bewildered. I'm a Nebraska fan for over 70 years, and our family's had tickets since the 30s. And I guess what I'm looking at right now is how I and other people can best support Nebraska going forward. But one of the things I hear, I just think it would be nice if all the athletic directors, the football coaches, and the presidents of the university all met together and talked eyeball to eyeball. That makes a big difference. What's happening right now, things are just splintering off, and you don't go out and put yourself in a corner. I heard on a sports network that Nebraska, underneath the table, has approached several conferences, and they don't want Nebraska in that conference. And we are in a world problem. It's not just Lincoln or Nebraska. It's us. We need to think about the health of our athletes, mental and physical, and of our students. And Scott mentioned all these financial things. Why doesn't Scott step up and put his words where his mouth is and take a cut in salary, at least down to $2.5 million until this pandemic is over?
He has taken a cut.
Oh, I didn't know what he asked. Well, thank you for how much of a cut has he taken?
Yeah, John, thanks for the phone call. Both he and Fred Hoiberg took cuts. I don't know that was announced by the athletic department about 2 months ago. John, appreciate the call. We all need to support these athletes, and I think we all do. And I think Nebraska does a great job of doing that. Let's go to Jonathan in Omaha. Hey, Jonathan, you're up on Sports Nightly.
Hey guys, how you doing? Hey, heard in the news this morning. I wanted to cry. I'm still, trying to hold back the tears. It sounds a little melodramatic, but I'm just thinking. I'm kind of piggybacking what you guys are saying about the economics of it all. I don't know if you guys ever seen the Husker documentary Through These Gates, but they kind of touch about like the hypothetical economics of Lincoln specifically, and how if there were to be no Husker football, it would be, just horrible for the businesses. And I'm just watching this documentary thinking ignorantly, like, oh, that'll never happen. We'll always have Husker football. And like, the scary reality of it is now, like, oh, my God, like, all these businesses in Lincoln, and, it's like a trickle-down effect. Like, I feel scared for them. I really do. And, I'm just worried about the people in Lincoln, and especially the downtown area, who really depend on the business of game day. And I just hope they pull through, and I hope the best for everyone, and that we all have Husker football for the sake of that, All
right, Jonathan, appreciate it.
Thanks, Jonathan, for the phone call. And Greg, I think you would agree. One of the coolest parts about a college football game day is walking around our studio, walking around to the stadium, and just seeing all the people walk around, and seeing the outdoor patios flooded with people, and to see just that feeling in your gut that you get on a game day, whether Nebraska's 10-0 or 0-10. Every Saturday feels important. It feels grand because of the people, because of the businesses. And, when I said there's a lot of parts to this, that's a big part to this is, my heart goes out to all those businesses that, let's be honest, football season is the only reason a lot of those places stay in business. Those 8 or 9 Saturdays a year keep them in business throughout the rest of the year, and without those, you're in the middle of the ocean without a paddle. So I feel for everybody. I feel for the families. I feel for the people. I feel for the fans. You say you get emotional. There's no judgment at all. This Husker football, doing this show for as long as we've done it, means so much to people, and to have that kind of taken away from you. I would imagine there was some tears shed today by some people.
Oh, no doubt. Jonathan, I think Scott Frost yesterday said $360 million is the economic impact for Husker football, home Saturdays in Lincoln. $360 million. Steve in Omaha on our text line said he agrees there should be no spring football. What's the number one reason the NCAA always gave to not having playoffs, too many games? Why? Player safety, and yet the Big Ten would look the other way and have a spring season? That's ludicrous. You're right, Steve.
Yep.
I totally get that. All right, need to take a break. Jeremiah Searle's going to join us next, give us his thoughts. I know where he stands on spring football, the thought of that. We'll get into that. We'll answer some more texts, get some more calls worked in as well as you listen to Sports Nightly here on a Tuesday night. We're back, Sports Island, here on a Tuesday night. Wild day. Big Ten Conference announces no football, no fall sports. In fact, we had a text asking about volleyball. That has been moved to the spring as well, and I think that is doable and workable. I think they can make that work. I think they can make soccer work. You can't do cross-country because you have track going on in the spring, so the cross-country season would be gone. But I do think volleyball can work. It's not nearly as taxing on the body as it is for football to play in the spring, and I think they can probably pull that all off if we have this under more of control and they feel like the medical people are giving the clearance for that to happen as well. That's one of the other frustrating things is you got different. The ACC had medical people from Duke University, which is a pretty prominent medical school today, saying we're fine. The measures that our schools are putting in place in the ACC are going to work. So you got those medical people saying that, and you got the Big Ten medical people saying, no, you can't do it. It's confusing, and I think that's what drives a lot of fans crazy is you're just not quite sure what to believe and what to hang in there with. So getting a lot of different messages. But volleyball, football, cross-country, soccer, women's soccer all get moved to the spring. And again, I think soccer, particularly soccer and volleyball, can make that work as well. Austin, we have any luck here? Let's see. We're trying to get Jeremiah hooked up here to chat with us tonight here on Sports Island. Jeremiah, big day today. I want to go back actually to yesterday. Your thoughts of Scott Frost and his press conference yesterday. What did you make of the Husker head coach yesterday?
I thought the Huskers did a great job yesterday. I thought that Coach Frost did a really nice job as well. I thought that he handled things the exact right way. I really think that he decided to have a message that he wanted to say, and he decided to really, in my opinion, put pressure on the Big Ten. I think he knew that this was the 11th hour. He knew that this was going to be the final straw. I mean, really the final Hail Mary, whatever you want to call it, to really try and get a fall season going. And I thought that he did a really nice job with that. I thought Adrian, Boodle, and Farniak all did a really nice job with it as well. So I think that it was mission accomplished as well as they could have tried to do it, and it really sucks that it came out today that it wasn't going to be able to happen.
He's gotten some criticism from some national people that felt like that's not your place to do that. I can't believe that opinion's out there. I would guess it had to play well in the locker room, right? I mean, the players had to love that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime your head coach goes to bat for you, you're always going to love that. I mean, it was what I loved about Coach Bo when I was there is you knew no matter what, he was always going to go to bat for you, the player. And, I mean, when you have a head coach, that's what you want. You want to make sure that the player is there, and the first thing in your foremost, and what Coach Bo always said, and I know Frost echoes this, is like he's there for his players. He knows without his players, he does not have a job. And I think that Scott wants his guys to play. He wants his guys to be able to do the things that they've been working so hard for, especially, I mean, they've been through – I mean, let's face it, they've been through a lot in the last 3 years. I mean, some of these guys between the Riley staff and the turnover and then all the stuff that's been happening, like this was a big year for the Nebraska program. So hopefully, I mean, we can get going in the spring and get Husker football. But I think that in reality, I don't know if we're going to have any Husker football this fall, which really sucks. So I know the players want to play, and I know the players are excited that Scott went to bat for them.
How about the players? I mean, I'm not sure they've been heard enough, and I know a lot of schools have been hesitant to let their players go out and talk, but I don't know that their opinions were heard much in these discussions that have taken place over the last 4 to 6 weeks about whether to have a season. That has to be frustrating, I would think, for players.
Absolutely. I mean, I know in the NFL you have your NFLPA union and you have the ability to have a seat at the table. And as a college player, you really don't have a seat at the table. And I think if there's one positive to come out of this is the fact that I think players are going to start demanding a seat at the table for decisions like this. I think that you're going to have committees of not just SAC, I mean, not the student-athlete committee, but from each sport at the seat of the table when you're making decisions like this for whatever sport it might be, how that sport affects the player. Because, again, at the end of the day, the head coach doesn't have a job without the players. The AD doesn't have a job without the players. So why don't the players get a little bit of input in this? I understand that it's 18 to 22-year-old kids, but it's their lives that are directly affected. It's their futures that are directly affected. So why not allow them to have a voice in what's happening for them?
Again, visiting with Jeremiah Searles, former Husker and a member of our Husker Sports Network team here on Sports Nightly. The last week, Jeremiah, for a player has to have just been so such a roller coaster of emotions. You get a schedule last Wednesday, you get your first practice on Friday, and then you get told no pads for your third practice, and then today you get this announcement. I just can't imagine the emotions in that locker room over the last 7 days.
I mean, yeah, and you can even stretch it back to the last 4 months. I mean, imagine getting your spring ball canceled and then the uncertainty there, and then you can stretch it even to not sure what you're at for summer conditioning. And the mental ramp up to get to a season is just as important as the physical ramp up. The mental, what you have to start preparing for to go in and week out and battle on a Saturday or a Sunday, whatever level, is just as important. And you learn how to do that through fall camp. You get the mental toughness when things are tough, when things are hard. How do you respond? Do you fold? Do you go through? And football itself, and I've told this to every player I've talked to, like, football itself is hard enough. Like, it's hard enough as it is. And then you add all this other crap on top of it. Like, it would stress the player out so much. I mean, and a lot of these guys if you're a first, second-year player, you don't really understand how it all works yet. So this is all new to you as much as it is to a guy that is a fifth-year guy that's been through it once or twice, understands how hard and what you have to do. So you put a combination of all that, I guarantee you these guys are emotionally just shot. Just shot. These guys have ramped themselves up, and now all of a sudden it's just completely yanked from out from underneath you, underneath the rug, and you're standing there just kind of like, now what? That becomes the question, is like, how do we handle this? What do we do now? And there's so many more questions than answers, and as a player, that's not what you want to hear.
Yeah, the laughable thing I heard today was, well, they can still do the 20 hours a week. For what? Why would you go do 20 hours a week if you don't have a game for maybe 6 months? Okay, let's get into the spring discussion. Urban Meyer on the BTN coverage today said, no way, it's not going to work. Even Barry Alvarez, the athletic director of Wisconsin, said, I don't think so. Jeff Brom, the head coach of Purdue, goes, well, I think that could happen, and we got to prepare for that to happen. Come on, this isn't even legitimate, is it?
No, it can't be. Here's the thing. If you're going to talk player safety to me, I've lived this, so I can speak to it a little bit more than the average person sitting home going, well, they could do it. If you want these guys to play 2 full seasons, and I don't care if it's an 8-game season, 10-game, 12-game, whatever, you're talking about 2 full seasons. That's 2 full seasons of practice, of games, of camp. It is the most dangerous thing to a player. Because I know after a season, college or NFL, it took me a full month of sitting on the couch just to get my body back to a place to start training again. Not to go play football again, to start low-level training again. So you're going to tell me that you're going to start a football season, let's say they start it in, February, right? You go February, March, April, maybe at the end of May. Okay, well, then you go May, June, July, August, September. That's 5 months until you're back, 4 months really, until you're back in camp in August. That isn't even close. You're not even barely in spring ball after 4 months of a season, and yet you're going to say prepare for another full season? It's just dumb. In my opinion, it's literally dumb. And if you're going to say, oh, we're not going to have this football season for player safety, then you better damn sure make sure you don't have 2 seasons in less than a calendar year, because that is one of the most unsafe things you can do to a player mentally and physically. Physically, if these guys go out there and try and do that, you're going to see an injury rate that is astronomical because you can't control it. The body is not meant to do that. The body is meant for 1 football season per calendar year at max.
Other sports can do it, I think. I think you can do it in volleyball. I think you can do it in soccer. Soccer kids play year-round anyway. So for those sports, I think it works. But in my eyes, and I think you totally agree, you can't do it. You can't ask that of college football players. You just can't do that.
No, imagine, you got guys that tear ACLs and barely make it back for the next year.
Yeah.
Right? You got guys that are going to have, it's football. You guys are going to have serious injuries, shoulders, and you're going to have that. So is that fair to them to have to miss out an entire season of eligibility because they got hurt in the spring season? That's BS, right? It's like, hey, this guy tears his ACL in March in the middle of a season. Well, you're going to have to miss an entire year of football now because you got hurt, versus you tear it in November, you have all the way up to September to get to play again. That's a real-life ramification that will happen because ACLs happen, shoulders happen, it all happens. And so then you're going to say, well, you got hurt in the spring season, so you just lose an entire year. It doesn't make any sense, man. It's just not safe.
Right. Jeremiah Searles, great stuff as always. What a wacky week. Now we sit back and see what happens. The ACC, the SEC say we're going to continue on the path that we've set. That sounds like the Big 12 is as well. This is going to be interesting. And if those 3 conferences do it and pull it off, whoa, that could change the landscape of college football forever.
I completely agree. I think you'll see. I think we're 3 to 5 years away, Greg, from seeing the NCAA and the Power Fives completely separate.
Yeah, Jeremiah, appreciate it. Be well.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on. Go Big Red as always.
Jeremiah Searles with us on our Sports Nightly Hotline, brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto Family, bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. Ben will rejoin me. We'll take some more calls coming up next. Let's go to the phones. Ron in Oakdale leads off this segment. Good evening, Ron. How are you?
Yes, I'd like to know what's going to happen with the seniors and their options this year.
Great question. Eligibility is one of the biggest hurdles that the NCAA is going to have to solve because of this. Early enrollees, players that are coming, at turn of semester at high school, they're going to have to address that situation. I'm guessing, if you were to play in the spring somehow miraculously, which they're not going to, how would that count? Is it by academic school year? Is it by calendar year? How do you determine how much a kid can play? How do you handle red shirts? That's the eligibility issue, period. Obviously, starting with the seniors is going to be an utter disaster.
And when you're in a financial hole, how do you have 105 or 110 guys on scholarship? I mean, these schools are all now really in bad financial shape, but you're going to ask them to carry more guys on scholarship? It's such a huge problem that they have going forward. All right, let's go to Kevin in Lincoln. Hello, Kevin. Welcome to Sports Nightly.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I was just going to, comment on. You guys do a good job about everything went on today, and whatever y'all said, is the truth. Anyway, all the guys that, decide we're not going to play this year, they're going to all get paid, right?
Yeah.
Like the commissioner, why don't he take a cut, and give some of his money to the universities? I think it's going to infect all the people that live in Lincoln. Maybe our taxes are going to go up. Do them guys, think about that when they make these decisions?
I'm sure it was brought to their attention, and appreciate the call. Kevin, I'm sure that they know that, and in some communities it's a bigger impact than others. Does the Gophers not playing college football affect the Minneapolis-St. Paul area? Slightly, but not near the extent that a Nebraska in Lincoln or a Purdue in West Lafayette or an Illinois in Champaign. But
Penn State College.
Yeah, but some of them, does Rutgers even move the needle in Piscataway?
Chicago.
Probably not. Northwestern and Chicago, probably not. So you've got a diversity within the league that it impacts some programs in cities drastically, and other places not so much. And so, and that's why all Nebraskans, I think, should be thrilled with Ted Carter and Ronnie Green and Bill Moose and Scott Frost, because they're fully aware of what Husker football means to this state financially, emotionally, and all those other things, and that's why they have fought so hard over the last couple of weeks. They have really gotten after it and are still fighting hard. I mean, we've had people on the text line wanting to know, can we go do our own schedule? I think that's a bit of a pipe dream. I think they're looking at that, but is that worth risking your membership in the Big Ten? I don't know. I don't know that that's realistic that they go do that. We'll see, but I'm proud of our administration. I'm proud of the head football coach, Ben, for the way they have fought for their team, and I think for all Nebraskans.
Yeah, major kudos to really everybody involved, and we talked about this a lot yesterday in applauding, Nebraska's higher officials for, their ability and their their passion, their drive, their willingness to work, and I think, Greg, we also have to applaud the players, for unionizing is a bad word these days with college athletes, but coming together and putting out those statements on Twitter as a team, reinforcing the fact that it's being done the right way at Nebraska. The protocols are working. Everything that was put in place to keep them safe is working. And, they were able to avoid, a lot of those other things that made it so dangerous. And, for me, I look at those players coming together as a hugely successful sign for not just the culture or program, but the unity and to have everybody behind those powers that be. It's you need that. You got to have that, and I give major credit to our guys, and especially the three that went up yesterday and answered all those tough questions. And one quick side note that we didn't quite get to, I'm not sure we will, so I'm just going to throw it in now. Barry Alvarez was talking about how they're still going to do the 20 hours a week or something. You're really going to ask these players to work out 20 hours a week? Why? And for what? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. To make these guys, we've already deemed it's unsafe to play football. Mm-hmm. So why are we working out? Why are you putting these guys together in tanks to lift weights and to do drills if it's so unsafe? So if we're going to pull the plug, let's pull the plug.
Yeah, Jeremiah and I were chuckling about that in the other segment. Let's go to Omaha. Robert, you're up on Sports Nightly.
Good evening, guys. Sad day today.
Very much so.
I have an idea, though. Yeah, I have an idea, though. I think we could do a home and home with Iowa and call it a scrimmage, but have the Heroes Trophy up for grabs. I think both states would more than support it, bring in some extra income for our athletic departments, and maybe even a couple other schools would get on board with it. It could have a purpose like the Heroes Trophy. So just my thought. So.
All right, Robert. Appreciate it. Thanks for the call. Iowa's basically put out a statement saying that they're jumping in line with the Big Ten and they're done. So I'm sure, they didn't even get their pads out. I was going to say they turned their pads in, but they're lockstepping with the rest of the league, and so their season's over. Good thought, though. I mean, yeah, do something for some charity, but I don't think that's gonna fly. Let's go to Grand Island next. Chris, you're up on Sports Nightly. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you guys just doing?
Been better, Chris. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, it's the dark day for Husker football. I can tell you that right now. But along with your guys' takes, why in the heck would you risk those players' safety and health to go out there and do 20 hours of lifting weights or what else they do? And it's like, why would you do Springs football, which is dumb in my opinion, with the chance of someone seriously getting hurt? Maybe somebody possible, like, for example, DiCaprio Budo or Adrian Martinez or Matt Farniak, the guys were up there speaking yesterday. What happened to the chance if they decide, for example, they want to forgo their senior season and risk the chance of getting maybe a top draft pick in the NFL draft, and then you got your other season ticket holders. So, like for example, like your track and field, your softball, or your baseball, and some people are also season ticket holders for football too. And it's like, what should I do? Should I go to a baseball game Saturday afternoon, or should I go watch the Husker football team on the Saturday afternoon? I mean, all around, this is a dumb call by the Big Ten, and why won't
Chris dropped off on it. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people agree with you, Chris. I think people are questioning why do this. And again, as I said off the top of the show, they may end up being right. Nobody may play any college football all fall long. And then in a month from now, maybe go, well, the Big Ten had it right. But what was the hurry? Well, why do you have to pull it now? And why did you go through the whole circus last week of releasing the schedule and getting everybody's hopes up? The last week is just baffling. It is awful guidance, leadership by this league, and it just drives me crazy.
Yeah, I think it's driven a lot of people crazy and a lot of people that cover the league crazy. I don't know if it's just a biased Nebraska opinion or take. I think you follow everybody around the country, or even just major college writers, and a lot of them seem to share the same opinion.
Yeah. All right, 531-500-4686, the number to call or text. We're back with more Sports Nightly next. And guest, dial us up on our Sports Nightly hotline, brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto family, bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. Back to those phones. Gothenburg and Don. Good evening, Don. Welcome to Sports Nightly.
Hello. I just want to say I think this whole thing is just a bunch of BS. But hello.
Yeah, go ahead. You need to turn your radio. Go ahead, Don.
Okay. I think we need to get back to playing football like it's supposed to be. And
all right, Don, appreciate it. Thanks for the take. I think we know where he stands on this thing. Hey, fans are really, really frustrated. I get it. Now, if we lived in a different part of the country where the virus has had much bigger impact, maybe we would think differently. But what I really want to hear, and the Pac-12 did a pretty good job, Ben, in their announcement. They put out a lot of the medical opinions that they were getting and basing some of this decision off of. Another fumble by Kevin Warren in the conference. We haven't seen any of that. I kind of want to see what some of their medical people were telling them. And I know UNMC was involved in this, and UNMC's telling Nebraska, you're fine. So UNMC was a part of the Big Ten Council. There's a disconnect there someplace.
Yeah, that's another thing, too, that's worth more conversation. Both sides are hearing from medical professionals to support their opinion. And I want to know what the heck they're actually saying, because I read that Pac-12 report today, and part of that was even confusing. They even said in that document that the protocols and the practice structure put in place were working. Everything was working, and they were avoiding these outbreaks. They were avoiding the spreads. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, if it's working so well, why are we punting on it? It was like a 7 or 8 page long article today. I got through it, and a lot of it was speculation. A lot of it was, plans put in place of how, air travel would be and all of that. So, I get it, but I'm with you. I would love to hear from the medical professionals themselves of specifically why it is it's safe, why it is it not safe, and really what's behind it.
I know that the young man from Indiana, the freshman offensive lineman that got COVID, went to the hospital, had all kinds of lung issues. I think that put a big scare into them. But lung issues have been around a long time, from offshoots of strep throat, the flu. Doctors have been dealing with this. This is not different. That part's not different. That is an effect, a post-effect of COVID. I get it. Yes. It's also a post-effect of strep throat and flu. And the guy from the Mayo Clinic today said, yeah, doctors know how to handle this. This is treatable. And so it's just go on and on and on. Good hour. Thanks to Jeremiah Searles for being a part of this hour here on Sports Nightly. Here we are back. Another hour of Sports Nightly on a tough Tuesday, to be honest with you, after the announcement today that the Big Ten Conference is canceling the fall sports, football, volleyball, soccer, cross country. So, yeah, for Husker volleyball fans, that's going to be pushed to the spring. And I'm cautiously optimistic that will happen. I think that can happen. I think it's a bit of a pipe dream to think you can play college football in the spring. I think it's too much to ask of the athletes, if indeed our main goal is the health and welfare of the student athlete, if that is exactly what the quote today was from Kevin Warren. We're going to hear some of that Kevin Warren sound. If you didn't hear his interview on BTN, we're going to play some of the clips for you. Boy, he got really uncomfortable when he was asked by Dave Rebson about Nebraska, and some of the comments Scott Frost made yesterday. We're anxious for you to hear those if you've not heard those yet today. Here are the numbers. You want to be a part of the program, 531-500-4686. You can also text us on that same number on our U.S. Cellular text line, the official wireless provider of the Huskers. Let's go to the phones up to Omaha. David, you're up next on Sports Nightly.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good.
Great show. I was just calling in. I'm hearing a lot of people complain. I'm really disappointed in the season. I kind of have a unique perspective. I live in Omaha. I'm born and bred to Husker, but I also live in Santa Monica, or I did half the year before COVID. Now it's kind of stuck here because it's exploding out there. I got to say, all the people that are frustrated, we're all frustrated too, but I see a lot of people out there wearing Husker gear, not wearing a mask, not social distancing. Those sort of things impact this sort of thing. So people are like, it's nice to, it's easy to complain and point your fingers, but as I think sure Scott would probably say, you got to also point the thumb, look at your own behavior. If we all are responsible and courteous to each other, wear a mask, wash our hands, stay 6 feet away, we can get through things faster. So if you want more football, you want to get back, you get the kids back in school and all the rest of this stuff, please think of other people. I think we're Nebraskans. We're supposed to be really good at that. I've been disappointed in some of the people out there, and everybody was wearing a mask and doing the right thing. Thank you. Kudos to you. But, yeah, it's frustrating, but I think that we all probably have a little bit of a personal stake in it. We probably should look in the mirror a little bit as well.
Virus goes virus. David, appreciate the call. I don't know. I don't have the answers. New Zealand thought they had the answers. They're an island in the Pacific. They haven't let anybody on the island. They went 100 days without cases. Now they have 6 or 7. The virus goes virus. So appreciate it. All right, Kevin Warren. First question from Dave Revson. Good one. What changed in 6 days?
And Dave, that's a fair question. Is that we always have to plan, and so we wanted to plan ahead, plan for a possible season. Made it very clear that the season may not actually come to fruition. We felt it was important to plan to organize a schedule that if we were fortunate to play fall sports, and especially football, that we would have a schedule in place. But, 6 days is 6 days. And I made it very clear also that this was a day-to-day situation. And as we began to gather information during these last 6 days, especially from our medical experts, we do have a task force in the Big Ten for emerging infectious diseases. And we also have a sports medicine task force that's comprised of many doctors and trainers, people who I have the utmost medical respect for. And I just said from day one that it was important. I'm not a physician, but it was going to be very important that on a day-to-day basis that we would listen and follow and understand and appreciate and embrace the advice from our medical experts. And that's what we're doing here. This is a holistic decision. There is too much uncertainty now for us to feel comfortable to go forward and have fall sport in the Big Ten. And we just need to constantly do the right thing from a medical standpoint to make sure that our student athletes have an environment that remains both healthy and safe.
It's absolutely incomprehensible to me, Greg, to think that there was so much change within the virus in the health and safety and well-being of the student athletes in 6 days to go from releasing a schedule, or as he said in his own words, planning ahead to pulling the plug. There hasn't been any new information on the virus that has been released in that 6-day window significant enough to go from releasing a schedule to pulling the plug on the season. So I have to disagree with about everything the commissioner said there.
Yeah, that seemed fishy. Now, Revson, follow that up. What exactly are the medical experts telling you?
There's too much uncertainty. We have a lot of uncertainty going on now. And even questions that we ask and still ask. And it doesn't mean that we're giving up forever. This is really our continuation of work and an evolution. We're going to continually have to gather information and look forward to the future. But there's so much uncertainty. And as we, asked questions 2 weeks ago, some questions were answered, but then you ask more questions, and then maybe those questions are answered, but then there's new questions. And then you ask questions even today. And it's not only in the Big Ten, I think just across the country and in the world, there is so much uncertainty about this virus. This is a novel virus. It is spreading at alarming rates. I believe there's over 5 million people worldwide and 160,000 deaths that have occurred. This is a serious virus. And, we were able to start practice last week. So there are many times in these type of decisions that you can have great plans. And I want to commend all of our Big Ten 14, our 14 Big Ten institutions. They've done a wonderful job, and our student athletes have worked hard to prepare. Our coaches have worked hard, our athletic directors, our chancellors and presidents, and all of our administrators. Our senior women administrators and faculty athletic directors, people have come together to do everything we possibly could do to have a fall season. But as you get closer to, it's one thing to make plans, and then it's another thing to really to put those plans into place and to start seeing what's happening and hearing what's happening from a practice standpoint on a lot of the issues as far as, social distancing and contact tracing and, testing. There are just a lot of issues, not only in the Big Ten, but in society that we're trying to get answers to. And it's one thing to try to get answers in certain areas of your life, but then when there are certain other areas, especially when it comes to your health and safety, that a lot of the questions that we need to make sure that we have answered now that we were getting closer to really going to the next phase of practice and getting closer to actually to compete, to have competition, is that there are just too many uncertainties to feel comfortable from a medical standpoint to proceed forward.
Yeah, I've never actually stuck needles in my ears, but that's about as close of a comparison as I can get listening to that. I mean, that is absolutely professional filibuster material there from the commissioner. And the whole thing about uncertainty, Greg, what happens if 3 years from now researchers find a lingering effect from people that have tested positive for the virus with athletes that are now in high school? You know what I mean? Like, and then 3 years from now they're in college and they're suffering all these effects, these uncertainties that he's talking about. We could be seeing effects from this virus 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10, 20 years from now. Are we just going to keep banging the season every time something comes up? I mean, I understand you want to be, looking out and making the best decision, but at least word it in a way that makes sense. And the thing that's confusing about that entire clip there is he's applauding the medical professionals, the people on campus, everybody for implementing those protocols that are working, yet we're pulling the plug. I would love to see a transcripted version of that and just go line by line and go through that and just say, yeah, this is what was said. This was the reasoning given by our brand new commissioner.
Life is full of uncertainties. I mean, that's what you deal with. There's going to be something new the medical industry is going to have to tackle in the next 5 years. I guarantee it. Something new they're going to that they don't know about now. You got to roll with it. Unbelievable. Somebody sent me an email that says, the only virus we've ever eradicated is smallpox. I mean, everything else we haven't eradicated. We found treatments for it, but it's still going to be out there. Holy moly, that was quite the answer right there. All right, he was then asked, was the vote to cancel unanimous?
Dave, from a vote standpoint, I can tell you one thing about it is that our schools, we don't always agree. And I can only talk about since I've been here. We don't always agree, but I think people understand, and I take that from a passionate standpoint, that we will be together in the Big Ten, and so I just think it's important to make that very clear. And I would rather not have a detailed discussion about your question about is a vote unanimous or not unanimous, but this is a decision that was made on a collective basis, and I just want to express to you that we will continually do everything we possibly can at every level in the Big Ten to make sure that our student athletes are respected, encouraged. And I know this, many people may not agree with the decision that we've made today, and I understand that. I understand the passion associated with it, but we have a responsibility as a conference to make sure that we're doing everything that we possibly can to keep our student athletes in an environment where, one, they can get a world-class education, earn a world-class degree, but then also compete athletically in a safe and healthy environment.
The answer is no, Ben.
Yeah,
it wasn't unanimous.
Let's summarize that. No, it was not unanimous.
No, it wasn't. Oh, my goodness. Okay, then he got asked about Nebraska. Can Nebraska play their own schedule?
David, I'll just say this. I know yesterday, for everyone included, yesterday, this whole last couple days, today, is very, very emotional. We have some of the best coaches, I believe, from a conference level standpoint in all of college football, and they are passionate. And the reason why they're great coaches is because they have great passion and they work hard and they're intelligent, and I understand that. So I know there were many statements that were made yesterday. There were many interviews that were done yesterday. I'm sure there are going to be many other statements made today and in the future. But I just take those statements as really a point of passion and supporting and representing their universities and their student athletes. And so I understand that. But as I sit here today, again, we have 14 institutions in the Big Ten Conference, and we've been together. I plan for us to continually be together and work collectively to make sure that we're doing everything that we possibly can to make sure that we keep our conference strong. We keep our conference very strong academically and also very strong athletically. So I understand, the passion. I understand the many things that have been said, and I can expect the many things that will be said. But I'm proud to be in the Big Ten, It's been a challenging year so far for many people on multiple levels. But I just want people to know that we're doing what we believe at this point in time in the best interest of our student athletes, and that is their mental, their physical, and their emotional health, safety, and wellness.
Walked all around that one. I do have another cut about Nebraska. I don't even know that it's worth playing.
No, it's not. He doesn't answer the question. To me, the funny part is, okay, so I mentioned The Office a lot on the show. It's like that episode where Michael's doing the evaluations and performance reviews, and Pam goes, it starts out by Michael asking me what my hopes and dreams were, and it ends by him telling me I can bench press 190 pounds. He was asked in that clip by Dave Revson about Nebraska, and he, right there when he finished, he was saying how he's proud to be a member of the Big Ten. What? Like, obviously, like what? I like to eat pizza. I like to spend time with my family. Golfing is fun. Also, it's not fun when you injure yourself. Don't touch hot pans. Like, it's like, how much more random stuff can you put in an answer without saying anything? That's man. It's almost like they had a scripted response, and they're like, okay, it doesn't matter what question he asks. This is your response to question 4. This is your response to question 5. This is your response to question 6. Whether it made sense or not, he just went off a scripted answer sheet. It was so bad, so bad.
I had people that were driving and listening to that and calling me or texting me going, this guy, this is unbelievable. This is awful. I'm like, yeah, he's not coming across very well here at all.
The worst part about it is you and I were talking today, and I was blowing off some steam. And it's one thing if this decision just kind of like, if there was a big medical breakthrough today, the carpet was ripped out from under his feet, and as a conference, as a society, we're like, okay, we can't play football. It's one thing if you're kind of put on the spot and have to speak to these questions that you genuinely don't have the answers to. But this is a man that's been sitting around on these meetings and has months, weeks, hours to prepare. You knew what questions you were going to be asked. You knew what was going to be asked of you. And that's the best you could come up with. I get that there's lawyer speak and there's things that you can't say and politic this, politic that, but, I mean, this was on another level brutal. And the other thing that to me stands out is this is the biggest test he'll face as a commissioner. I feel confident in saying that. And I don't know that people in Nebraska, people in Columbus, Ohio, people in State College, Pennsylvania, will ever be able to look past this. He could get the next 50 problems right, but this one will always trump his reputation for the negative part of the needle. And I don't know that it ever switches course.
It was not good. It just kind of added to the entire week how botched it's been by the Big Ten for the last week. All right, and I will say one more thing about this. Kevin Warren has a son who's a college football player at Mississippi State in the SEC that, as of right now, still planning on playing college football this fall. How ironic will it be if Kevin Warren is spending several Saturdays this fall watching his son play college football and the league that he oversees is on the sidelines?
Or even in Starkville, Mississippi in the stands watching him. I mean, yeah, that would be ultimate irony.
Wow. All right, we're going to get some take from Brian Christopherson, our good friend from 24/7 Sports. We'll see how he has couched the last week and the events of the last couple of days around the Huskers and where we go from here. We'll do that coming up next. Here on a Tuesday night, a wild Tuesday night that's kind of wrapped up a wild 7 or 8 days of covering college football. One guy that's been all over it is joining us now. Brian Christopherson from 24/7 Sports. Man, last 24 hours have really been, the Frost press conference and then the announcement today of the end of the Big Ten football season for the fall. How do you couch all this up, Brian?
It's sad day, really, because we all know what the fall football season means to people in this state. And I'll be honest, yesterday morning, I thought, okay, it's probably the end game. There were reports out that made you feel like there isn't going to be a season. And then by the afternoon, I had a bit of optimism, and I don't think I was alone in that. And a big part of it was Scott Frost and some other, high-profile coaches in the Big Ten really use their platform, I think, to address some key points on the other side of this discussion. and say they think they can pull this off. And I thought Scott Frost laid it out very well yesterday, and I think a lot of Husker fans loved it. And I really woke up this morning thinking, at the worst, they're going to delay this thing. And I think a lot of people close to it kind of thought that too. If you listen closely today to interviews, I think there were coaches and even athletic directors who thought they were maybe going to delay it till September 26th and see what happened. And, of course, they went all the way with it. So it was a bummer. And, can they pull off a spring season now? We don't know what the climate's going to be like in the spring and if we'll be in a better position to do that or not, or if you could have 2 seasons in a year. It just feels like a real down day for college athletics. We kind of knew this might be coming, but it's still hard when you meet it.
Brian, we just played some clips from the commissioner's interview on BTN. I don't know if you had a chance to catch it. If you did, what did you make of his comments? Well, it's tough to have answers that are going to appease anybody right now. I can understand that from his vantage point. That said, there was a lot of word salad in there. There was a lot of I didn't feel like he gave a lot of clarity to the issue. And I think the biggest contention people have, and especially the players, is that, 6 days ago we put out a schedule and we're discussing that, and we're saying, okay, you can open up camp Friday, and the players and coaches are all doing the right stuff, and for the most part, the testing results were good. And then suddenly, over the weekend, it just shifts, and I think that's where a lot of people are puzzled. And I know there were headlines out there, and there were doctors who said that there could be long-term effects here, cardiac-wise, if you get it, and I don't know enough about that topic to speak, with confidence on it. And I understand that you got to be very cautious with this thing. But it's tough because, I think 99% of the players, and especially at Nebraska, were saying, let's go for it. And that's really what tipped me. I'll be honest, the last few months I've kind of gone back and forth on this, but what sold me was these guys want to do it. They train their whole lives for this. For this opportunity to be on this stage. There's high school seniors across the state who are trying to get recognized and recruited, and we don't know if they'll get their season or not. And there's guys like Deontay Williams and DiCaprio Boodle who are going to be seniors. And, they're thinking about probably playing at the next level and putting some good stuff on film that helps them out, and now that's up in the air. I just feel terrible about all that and what's lost with all of it because I think Jared Lambrick, Scott Frost's chief of staff, had a good point the other day in the letter he said where, I don't know if college football can be the exact same without a season. It's going to be a real test to get back to where we were. Brian Christopherson is with us from Huskers 24/7. We're talking about all the news events of the last 24 hours. The Huskers put out a pretty quick response, and it was pretty obvious that they were not in line with this decision to bang the fall season. Pretty strong statement, and this kind of is not a Big Ten way of doing things, Brian. And the Big Ten's always prided themselves in one for all and all for one. Nebraska looking a little bit like a renegade here. What did you make of the statement put out by the university after the cancellation of the fall?
Yeah, you categorize that well because I do think the Big Ten's a league where it's like everybody put your hands in and, you're all on the same page. But, Nebraska, Scott Frost and the people in Nebraska have to stand up for themselves. And they think they can play. They've thought they could get it done. They've been safe through this process. They feel like they've taken all the steps necessary. And that's why I liked what Frost did the other day. At the end of the day, a head coach has to go up front and stick up for his players. And that's what he did. And I think all his players watching it appreciated it. I think recruits watching appreciated it. Now, do I think it would be easy or even possible for Nebraska to go outside of the Big Ten and play? No, I don't. I don't know what all the contract layers are, but it seems like something that would be very difficult to pull off without, possibly burning bridges with the league you're in. And for whatever nostalgia people have around here for the old Big 8 and Big 12, the Big 10 has been pretty good to Nebraska financially. It was a smart move in that respect. It's one of the reasons why we're talking about building a new facility and all that stuff that's going on. Nebraska's TV contracts with the Big 10, every year they put out the numbers, and it's basically the Big 10 and SEC at the top, and the Big 12 is quite a ways below it. So I don't know how realistic it is that you can go outside of what was said. That noted, I don't mind Nebraska, at least for tonight, keeping their options open and just seeing where this goes, but I don't know if it can go anywhere.
Brian Christopherson again with us from Huskers 24/7. The Big Ten a month ago, the first conference to say were no non-conference games at all. I think that surprised people around the country, and then they were the first to cancel it today. The Pac-12 followed it an hour or two later. Nationally, I think there's some people scratching their head about what's your rush, and I think that falls in line with Nebraska's thinking, Scott Frost's thinking. I think even your thinking 12 hours ago is maybe they're just going to go ahead and push it back a few weeks and see what happens once kids get back on campus, and if there is a spike in infection rate with the virus that we have to worry about. The Big Ten, talking about Nebraska being a bit of a renegade, it seems like the Big Ten's kind of been out on a boat by themselves, haven't they, the last couple of months?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, either you're going to try or you're not going to try, and that's where I thought it was a mistake last Wednesday to put out a schedule like you're going to go through the effort of seeing what happens. They never gave an opportunity for us to see what happens. I know there was worry about when guys lock arms on the field, would there be more positive tests and would that transfer throughout a team and all that? And it's possible that could have happened. But if you're gonna go for it, and let's see for a few weeks what happens actually, instead of just calling it off after you've sent players out there for 4 or 5 days to work out with all these weird headlines floating in the wind. And a lot of people speaking off the record, and that's where it's difficult for some people. I think a lot of people wanted public figures to come forward and say, this is why we're thinking what we're thinking, this is where we're at. And that was not happening through this process. It was a bunch of stuff that was being leaked through the media. And so that's why I feel like Scott Frost and some coaches the other day felt like, hey, somebody's got to come forward and stick up for this other side. And I appreciated that they put their face to it and their name to it as opposed to behind closed doors and anonymously. So the Big Ten, it sounds like most of the presidents were kind of in agreement. I know they took some medical advice into serious account, and you have to respect that decision because that's what it is now. You can't change the news even if you don't like it. And, we'll see if we can play in the spring, but I don't know how you fit 2 seasons in one calendar year. I don't know if you could play a couple exhibition games or something in the spring with FCS schools or something like that and then have a regular season. There's going to be all sorts of interesting ideas, I'm sure, but what's feasible is another question.
Last thing for you, BC, the Big 12 has come out and said that they're going to release their schedule within the next 24 hours. They're going to be I think they're going to be able to play their non-conference game whenever they want to in early September. If they're successful along with the SEC and the ACC, long-term ramifications for the Big Ten, does this damage the Big Ten in your eyes long-term by sitting on the sideline if those 3 leagues can put together a season here in the fall?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it definitely does. And I think that's a big concern of the coaches from a competitive standpoint is you've got to worry if other leagues go forward and play. One, you got to worry about transfers and all that stuff. Plus they're playing and you're not. You're sitting out basically 15 to 24 months without playing games. And that's tough to keep your program functioning the way you want it when it's like that. Now, obviously, these are weird times, and I wouldn't be surprised if when it's all said and done, these other leagues end up backing out too. That could very well happen. But your question is a very good one, and I would think would be a very big concern of Big Ten coaches right now. If you're sitting out and these other schools are practicing, how are recruits going to look at that? How are players going to look at that? It's a worry. That's why I think what Frost did yesterday was important, because I think if nothing else, even if the Big Ten made their decision, I think players on this team and recruits saw that's a guy who's passionate about playing, and they mean business there in Nebraska about playing football if they can. And I do think there is still some usefulness that might come out of that press conference for Nebraska, even if the day's news was not what they wanted.
Yeah, great point. BC, we appreciate it. Thanks so much. Be well.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Brian Christopherson with us on our Sports Nightly Hotline, brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto family, bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. 531-500-4686, the number if you want to dot us up with a comment or question. It's also our U.S. Cellular text line. U.S. Cellular, the official wireless provider of the Huskers. Let's get back to the phones. We'll go to Council Bluffs. Tim, welcome to the program. Good evening.
Good evening. So I was just curious if you could explain the legal agreement or the legal situation between Nebraska and the Big Ten. If Nebraska were to play games and the Big Ten is not playing this year, is there any kind of legal action, or what relationship do they have and the Big Ten could or could not take? Thanks.
I'm sure there is. I don't really know. I think that there's got to be some contractual things, and I'm guessing that's why the commissioner was so careful with his words today, as I'm sure now the lawyers are involved if indeed Nebraska chooses to go down that path. Absolutely, there got to be some legalities involved in that.
That's a great question, and the only thing that I've heard come out from that is what Iowa and Gary Barta said today, is that, based on their agreement with the league, that is not allowed, so they will not pursue that. That's the only thing I've actually heard on that. We hope to get an answer from the commissioner on that. If you were listening earlier, you heard his roundabout answer as if that was a possibility or not, and obviously didn't get into any of the legal jargon of the agreement of the two parties, that being Nebraska and the Big Ten.
Yeah. Let's go to Orchard and Matt. Good evening, Matt. Welcome to Sports Nightly.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I love the show. But my question would be, if all of these young men who are on the football team and the young women on the other teams as well, if they're old enough to vote for their local, state, and federal government, and they're able to sign up for the military, they're of their own volition and possibly sacrifice themselves for the country and all that, why wasn't their individual voice heard in this more strongly?
It's a great point. We talked about that in hour one. Appreciate the call. And I asked Jeremiah Searles that too. I don't know that the players really were talked to. I know Commissioner Warren had two student athletes from each school, a female and a male, and he did a conference call with them a couple of weeks ago. And so that would be 28 student athletes that he talked to personally, had on a conference call where they were able to express some of their feelings. Outside of that, I don't know that the athletes tried, Ben, on Sunday night. You had Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields and those guys putting out a thing on using social media saying we want to play, and so they were trying to get their voices heard via that way. But I don't know that a lot of the powers to be took the time to talk to many athletes.
Yeah, and that's, I used the word union earlier loosely, probably shouldn't have used that word for this reason, is because that's something that's starting to generate a lot of momentum with the college athletes. The Pac-12 put out a statement, the Big 12 put out something that they want to have taken into consideration. So when you have the Big 10 and the Pac-12 come out with these things and essentially unionizing the players, the one tricky word that's always going to be brought up, and you mentioned decisions that you can make as a legal American adult at the age of 18, voting, the decision for tobacco, and then at 21, alcohol consumption and gambling. Those are all rights that you have, but you also are under the umbrella of which program you are a part of, and you are to comply with their rules, which means you forfeit the right to do some of those activities. Because of your status and where you are. So I think it does differ a little bit from legality to following a certain set of rules. No different than your job. There are some things some parts of your lifestyle that you can't incorporate, you can't partake in based on where you work. So the amateurism part of it, I think, is where the line is drawn. But you better believe there's a movement within the players to get their voices heard more, especially more than just what they're given right now, which is their social media platform, which they're having to build on their own anyway. So, I mean, you know what I mean? So Trevor Lawrence, there is always going to be a Trevor Lawrence or a Justin Fields or a Lamar Jackson from Louisville type player that has a big following, but that's following that they've gathered themselves. So it's a tough spot to be in for sure. It's a good comment, good call.
Could be the next big wave in college sports. Athletes trying to gain more power and more control, and maybe could be the next big thing in the next 3 years. Let's stay in Lincoln and chat next with Don. Good evening, Don.
Yes. Okay, how can the one commissioner who voted to close down the Big Ten football season go and watch or listen to his son who plays for Mississippi State and let that go? And then, how can it be a national title game this year or playoffs?
Yeah, Don, good questions, and we brought that up too. I mean, the commissioner does have a son, plays football at Mississippi State, and right now that school is a go for their season. That would be pretty ironic if he's watching his kid play where his league got shut down. And if those three conferences hold, the Big 12, the ACC, the SEC, I don't know. I think college football playoff would certainly be watered down by quite a bit. Would they still try to jam one in? I don't know. I think that's a question for another day. Let's head to Omaha. Mike, you're up next on Sports Nightly.
Yeah, I know we saw the Shrine game, which I believe was the first football game played since this virus. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Has there been any consequences from that with any of the players? Anything turned up where there was some serious issues?
Not that I've heard of. In fact, there have been several Shrine Bowls around the country that have taken place in the last month or so. I think one of the writers from the Omaha World Herald, maybe Stu Popasol, who tweeted that out today, is like, wasn't that kind of a test case? And if those kids did it without really much testing and that kind of stuff, shouldn't that have been considered?
That was a real football game. I mean, those guys were going at it.
Sure were. High school practice.
Can I ask you something? Have you guys had any UNMC people interviewed? Because I'd really like some medical information, because apparently Nebraska's medical information is that, hey, we can do this, and even the heart condition can be monitored and dealt with. And I've had heart issues where your heart's racing, and that trumps everything. I mean, you can see how that would scare people, particularly if it's happening in large numbers with these kids. So I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the call. Maybe we should do that. And, we talked about this earlier, too, that, there looks like one of the after effects of COVID-19 is some heart issues, much like there are after strep throats, much like there are after the flu. And so, yeah, that's not a bad thought. Maybe we can get somebody from UNMC, because they've been helping Nebraska quite a bit, and they've been advising both Nebraska and the Big Ten. And so where's the disconnect here? Nebraska being told by UNMC people, you're good, and the Big Ten saying we're not. And maybe we can get Bill Moose to answer some of those questions at some point in time as well, Ben.
Yeah, it's frustrating because everywhere you talk to has their sources. Everybody has their sources, nudging them in the right direction, advocating for one way or the other, and both are dipping into that bag to say, well, we have medical professionals that are telling us this. We have medical professionals that are telling us that. So, yeah, the number one question, and you've already asked it perfectly, is where's the disconnect? What are these medical professionals believing that these are not? And why are we on such different pages with it?
Yeah. Appreciate the call, Mike. We need to take a break, back with some more calls, and wrap up the hour next. Ben McLaughlin with you on a wild Tuesday night of Sports Nightly here on the Husker Sports Network. 531-500-4686, the number if you want to shoot us a text. Let's go back to the phones, up to Montana. Paul, you're up next on Sports Nightly.
Hey, guys, it's an honor. Brutal day. Not surprised about the Pac. To be honest with you, I'm surprised the Pac-12 still keeps score. Pretty to give each other a trophy at the end of the game, but whatever. I got to be honest with you. This is kind of what we get for joining a bunch of, a bunch of blue states. And what's the odds of us ever really looking at, like, going back to the Big 8, Big 12?
Yeah, Paul, first of all, shout out to Montana. Got family up there. Thanks for calling up there. Love Big Sky Country. It's an interesting question. I think it's a question that I think 2 weeks ago, maybe longer than that, a month ago, probably was a farce, was far away. Wouldn't shock me if that idea has been tossed around and Nebraska kicks the tires. I don't know if they actually reach out and make phone calls, but maybe they have a couple of phone calls within the department of looking for their best opportunity to move forward. Wouldn't shock me either way, but I think we're still a little ways from that.
I think it's a long shot. I think a lot of ways, and Brian Christopherson said it earlier in the hour, the Big Ten's been pretty good to Nebraska financially. I just don't see that happening. Let's wrap up the hour with Nick in McCook. Hello, Nick. Welcome to Sports Nightly.
Hey, guys. We talked about a lack of statistics to back up the decision. So I looked up the CDC report from August 7th. The hospitalization rate due to COVID-19 is 0.1376%. And the only thing lower than that right now is my confidence in Big Ten and its new commissioner. And that's all I have.
All right, Nick. Appreciate it. You know, and hey, Scott Frost said this yesterday. He said, hey, we take this virus seriously. He goes, in fact, I'm worried some of our players don't take it seriously enough. It's not a hoax. I know some people think it's a hoax. It's not a hoax. It's a nasty virus. But we've dealt with medical problems in the past, maybe not to this severity in most people's lifetime. There was a pandemic in 1957. There was the Spanish flu in 1918 that wiped out over 12 million people in the world. This is 160,000 in the United States. It's bad. But I also think we've learned an awful lot in the last 4 or 5 months. We're treating it better. We're identifying it better. We're knowing which parts of the population it affects more. We do know that, and thank goodness it doesn't affect young people very much. And I think that's why there was some real hope that college football could happen, because it doesn't really affect the younger population to a certain degree at all. So it's disappointing. We'll move on. We'll see what happens. I'm worried, Ben, for a lot of people, it's going to shake up a lot of people's lives, not only here in Lincoln but across the country.
Yeah, it's going to be destructive. The fallout's going to be massive, and I don't know that we fully understand to what extent yet, and it will be a while before we do.
Callers into our show, dial us up on our Sports Nightly hotline, brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto family, bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. Good hour here on Sports Nightly. Another one to go.